Hello, world. Welcome to Notes from the Aleph, a high point where all things are visible. We are a bunch of game designers, game players, and students of game design, and we're here to do roundtable discussion. I am Norman Rafferty, he, him. I work for Sanguine Games. Thanks for coming out and seeing us at First Square a couple weeks ago. It was a lot of fun. And I work for, like I said, Sanguine Games. And let's mix things up because I'm going to ask Red to introduce himself.
Oh, crap. I wasn't ready. Hold on.
All right, too late. Lessons, you're up.
Well, I guess I wasn't ready to either, but let's go. I'm a streamer and a streamer, and also here on YouTube, on YouTube and on Twitch. I'm a writer over at Amazon, Night and Stars, and I run a game here on every Sunday on Rakta's channel, Mirror Souls Shadowrun 5th edition.
That's all right. And Red.
Okay, I'm ready now. RedRabbit here. I run our Ironclaw game on Wednesday mornings. It's really cool. You should come check it out because Ironclaw is a cool system. I also play in our Forbidden Lands games on Sundays, and that's also in the morning, and that's also a very cool system. And I play a bunch of other RPGs, and I like them a lot.
Yeah, but we're going to try and lower the hater rate a little bit today. I'm just going to ask a quick question. Has anybody here played Killer Bunnies and the Quest for the Golden Carrot?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, good. You have played it.
Well, hold on. Time out. There's a card game. Are we talking about the card game or is there an RPG?
We're talking about the card game.
Oh, I have played that. Yeah.
I'm opening with it. Okay, so you played that card game, right? So it's the card game where you put cards down and you slowly push them. And there's of course a lot of Harry Potter references, which haven't aged badly at all, and Austin Powers references because it's an old game. You push the cards, and the objective of the game is there will be 24 random carrots, and one of them is randomly the winning one. Yep. And they made like how many expansions to this game? There's like thousands of cards. Okay,
yeah, they made a lot of them.
Right, but remember, the way you win the game is out of the 24 carrots that are in the box, one of them is randomly winner. So
and you don't know which one.
Get that one, you can win. And then there'll be characters who, after the game is over, have special powers. The Zodiac set was that. So to sum all of this up, it's a game that takes several hours to play, has numerous add-on rules, and whether you win is completely random.
Completely random. You could improve your chances slightly, but it's ultimately random.
I have been there where someone spent 30 minutes at the end of the game going through all the different random situations to win, and I said, by the way, the winning carrot's number 8, and I have it. So you could
exactly. I had 2 carrots, and one of them wins me the game.
Right, and I won the game. So, but Killer Bunnies has a gazillion expansions, lots of parts of it. It is an example of a game that you do not play. Killer Bunnies plays you.
Yes, it does. It was really popular when it came out. I think I was at Gen Con.
Eventually, Cards Against Humanity came out, which is the same thing, only more vulgar and cheaper and faster.
There you go.
But Killer Bunnies was also really popular because games that play you have a hallowed tradition of having a gazillion rules. I grew up on GURPS, Hero System, and Rollmaster, and Aftermath, and First Edition Metamorphosis Alpha, and Gamma World. I remember games that had really convoluted rule systems that were really complex. In fact, some of you may have played Ironclaw First Edition, which, oh my God, has like a staggered initiative and rolls for unconsciousness and all this kind of stuff that is not in the current edition. Because there was a love of rules for the sake of rules. And every now and then you see a heartbreaker. So just the point behind this was that, one of the jokes I like to say is if one rule is good, then 3 rules are 3 times as good. And I guess we're going to talk a little bit about, games that have rules that people think add to the experience, because obviously if you're doing rules, you're doing a game, right? That's what a game is, right? It's a bunch of rules that you follow without necessarily adding more options or playability or expression.
Yeah. I'm going to put a sample of 5th edition Shadowrun, and it's the part of the rules that it's kind of infuriating me is, oh, hey, you can do all these things with firearms. But then they goes into the weeds of how exactly many bullets you need to do every one of those things. Instead of like saying, I would simplify the rules like, hey, if you do a full burst, your magazine's empty. Like, no, this one that has 3 rounds. This is 5 rounds. This rounds. Back in the game I'm designing, you don't track ammo.
In the past, I can't get players to track ammo. So yeah, I don't know how you guys do it.
we don't.
You just don't.
Exactly. You're supposed to, though, because that says in rules, but we don't. I actually designed a game where basically the only thing I care about is whether your gun works when you fire it or not.
Yeah.
But I played those games where it's like, no, if you fire this gun, you use 30% of your ammo, but if you do this, only 2% or 5%. It's like, do we really need to track the ammo when all I want to know is I shoot, I either hurt or kill the enemy, and if they shoot at me, they do the same? That's what I want.
Well, you've seen a big move away from that. Like D&D 3 and 4 introduced action economy. The idea that you only had certain actions you could use. D&D 5 still has it in a half-assed way. But, you saw a lot of that disappear. Like D&D 5 wanted to get rid of bonuses and penalties. They just want advantage and disadvantage, and you either have it or you don't. And apparently people are very satisfied with this change because it's not one of the ones I hear people complaining about a lot. And so people also you see Fate Accelerated, and Forged in the Dark and Powered by the Apocalypse extolled, as well as OSR in some cases, games that are largely a lot simpler than what you saw in the 90s.
I like that.
Yeah, I don't think, Zweihander confuses the hell out of me, because who is asking for Warhammer but more complicated?
Yeah, I don't know.
Apparently a lot of people.
Apparently a lot of people. You can still buy Warhammer 2nd Edition. By the way, buy Warhammer 2nd Edition. It's great. 4th is good too, but 2nd is great.
Yeah. Actually, don't recall having a lot of fun with Warhammer. I think I had more fun with Sidewinder because of the GM had a good evocative.
Sidewinder? I'm not familiar with that one.
Zweihander.
Zweihander. It's I'm a Spanish speaker speaking English and trying to speak German. Sorry,
Zweihander. Yeah, well, Zweihander added an action point system, and not just actions, but action points, which is almost always the hallmark of too much design. Action points is one of those things they used to bring up in the 80s as gimmicky design that doesn't work. So I think it's hilarious that Zweihander does it.
Yeah, we talked about that off screen.
Yeah, there's
and I think it was a GM basically who made it work. Otherwise, I don't think I would have liked it.
Well, that I think we've done that as a different discussion topic, which is people don't talk about the game; they talk about their experience. And so there's a lot of times where, I as a designer will be quizzing people. And I was validated to see this. Someone pointed out some D&D 3 design discussions where Monty Cook, who was one of the people working on that, would confront people about D&D 2. Because people say, we love the staggered initiative system in D&D 2. And Monty Cook said, really? You were rolling initiative every round based on what weapon and intent you were going to do? I said, well, no, we usually just kind of hand-waved over it and did it the way we wanted to. Which meant,
you did not like the initiative system. That's
right.
You weren't using it.
Right. So there's Monty Cook separating. People will say they love a game when they're not actually doing those rules. And so D&D 3 took a position that we're going to delete stuff no one's doing, which was not only is that a rare design decision, that was a rare design decision for Dungeons and Dragons. I can't specify enough how D&D 3 said, let's streamline shit. A D20 plus ads for fucking everything.
Yeah.
Because before that, they had all kinds of weird shit.
And then they did advanced classes and through that.
Well, no, advanced classes was also compartmentalizing it, because before that you would have NPC-only classes that players would see in a magazine and bring to the table. And that was an attempt to formalize that by saying, you have to ask permission for this, which I thought was a genius decision of, let's put other classes. I mean, compare that to D&D 5, where in D&D 5, you can only play the classes they print, and people say, what about the hybrid or multi-class or Umber rules? Okay, great. You've thrown everything out the window now.
One way I think, talking about 3rd edition, but I do think that games play you is, and you mentioned it kind of earlier with all the expansions, the idea that as the game progresses, you need to support the game, and therefore you have to buy everything that comes out. Otherwise, the game is incomplete. And so it's I can't play this version of whatever game is because I'm missing the rules for the strange giant robot that is psychotic, cybernetic, psionic, magical thing. But you were playing the game before without those rules. In fact, I don't know. Company.
Yeah, well, relevant to today's discussion is that Hasbro has announced that Spelljammer is coming out, which is, I've been saying despite popular demand.
Popular demand.
Well, it's a game for players owning ships and then sailing them to places. And based on what goes on in D&D, I have to ask, why? Did you guys actually want to run a merchant marines and keep track of cargo on your ships and take them to certain places and buy and sell them? Because that's what Spelljammer is. You could have just wandered from place to place through planar gates beforehand and just killed shit. Now you own a ship that you're supposed to maintain. Are you guys actually going to do this?
It's basically space. It's D&D in space with muskets.
Well, it's piracy, and it doesn't have you'll have spells, and there's probably going to bring back their nonsensical gravity rules. But once again, it's an example of like you just said, of supplementing things, and I'm discussing like rules. Like it'll have a whole bunch of rules in it for ships, and I'm telling you right now, like even the guys who are going to stream this stuff, they are going to ignore 90% of that because they just wanted to be in space, or they'll do what Rafferty always accuses the game of. They'll do it exactly once, and then
and then never again.
This is no fun.
Yeah.
And once again, that's an example. Like you. I'm not sure if I should be telling people this as a game designer. It's players asking for something that they don't actually want.
Yeah. Well, this was, I don't know if we mentioned it, but this is part and parcel of the lore conversation, and part of the reason why I understand why lore is important, because lore sells people games. People eat lore up. They fall in love with a world that is brimming with possibility. But really, the game is not, even in the most lore-heavy games, the game that you're playing, you're never interacting with lore. Lore is, behind museum glass. And the things that you're doing are only ever going to maybe be influenced by the lore that exists or your player's knowledge of it. And in a situation like this, they're going to add mechanics for a type of genre experience that players don't want. They just want permission to play the game they're already playing in a different setting, which they already have. Obviously, the only difference is space and muskets that you can do that.
It's a paradox because it's on the one hand, you already have the freedom to do anything you want in every role-playing game ever. I mean, every role-playing game says do whatever the hell you want.
Exactly. Is a Spelljammer part of Forgotten Realms, you said? What?
Yeah, specifically Forgotten Realms. There are published adventures set in the Forgotten Realms that you get on a boat and sail on their planes.
Is this okay? Interesting. Is this just because everything is Forgotten Realms now because it's the de facto setting for 5e, or was it?
Yes. This was someone brought up in the chat. That's like, well, someone said it's its own setting. No, it's not. It's got illithids and slods and all the critters who are also in Forgotten Realms. And people saying, well, isn't that part of Forgotten? It's like, 6 of one, half dozen of the other. You can't say it's its own setting. By the way, they've written novels about Spelljammer that cite places and locations in Forgotten Realms. I'm here to make that kind of semantics. I'm here. We're supposed to talk about complexity in gaming for the sake of complexity,
right?
Because when Hackmaster 4th edition came out, Hackmaster 3rd edition was basically an OSR. It was basically like the basic set D&D, the BCMI fork. And when they came out with a new edition, they added the knockback rule, which is when you hit a creature, you divide the damage by the creature's size, and that knocks them back a certain number. And they have a playtest example, which is one of the most hilarious rules ever, because it means every single attack you have to do a math calculation, a angle of attack calculation. You have to move a miniature a little bit, and of course, it's moving them an odd number of feet away from you. Which means if you're a melee fighter, the mere act of hitting people is knocking them away,
which is undesirable. Yeah, that's a weird one.
It's a default rule. So you have to do it every single time you hit somebody. And it's one of those things where I'll get some people in the stream saying, I was watching some people stream that game and they weren't doing that.
I wonder why.
I mean, if once again we say the blanket statement of, anything you want with the game. I mean, like the big complaint behind this was games that have like a lot of complexity in them, and that either we're on the tangent right now of players ignoring that, but there's sometimes for the sake of it, it's like the idea of doing that, because I played Rollmaster for several years, and Rollmaster annoys the hell out of me as much as I want to say I like it, because there's all these different rules that all stack on top of each other, and I'll see players meticulously tracking them down. But tracking rules and tracking numbers is not the same as having free will or agency. It's not the same as like gaming. It's spreadsheet tracking. And you can confuse all the maintenance of doing all this for limited options. That's why I brought up Killer Bunnies. It's like Killer Bunnies, yes, you want to get as many carrots as possible, but that doesn't guarantee that you win. The real way you want to win is get the game over with as soon as goddamn possible, because if you didn't win, you can play a different game. Or another game.
Yeah. The objective is not to play, I guess?
Yes. The best way
I mean,
to
like
win is
another
not
big
to
example
play.
might be I am a complete utter astounding at the high reviews that Burning Wheel gets, because you guys were already in Torchbearer, and I have railed
That's a
against
formative experience.
Yeah, Mouse Guard, which is you go through this huge, stupid formative experience of disposition points, and then we abstractly play this out double blind, and at the end, half the time you all go out at the same time, so you just have to compromise anyway. So you basically wasted 30 minutes of everybody's time.
It was a real clunker in a lot of different ways. But
people love it and give it high reviews and talk about it, so they must enjoy all of this complexity, right?
Do people love it? That's one thing I'd be very interested to talk to people who are diehard Torchbearer fans. Because, different perspectives. It could just be different perspectives. But personally, I think that I'm for not being in this hobby as long as many people have been, right? People are like, oh yeah, I'm like 10-year veteran, 20-year veteran. I was playing D&D 3rd edition 15, 20 years ago, Jesus.
Yep.
But not I wasn't playing anything else, and I put it down through my teens and into college and then picked it up again later. But I've played a lot of different stuff. And I've never been so bewildered by as many rules as in Torchbearer. So I'm very curious to see how people play those games.
Often, I mean, this is the haterade experience. Griffin's not here to soften me. When I talk about people rating their experiences, often after, I'm a game designer, so I want to experience other games. So, I'll ask people after they've been in the game, hey, when you were playing this, what were you experiencing? This even came up with Apocalypse World. I went and ran some Apocalypse World, and then I went to go ask people, okay, what did you do when this happened, or how did you play out this rule? Mm-hmm. And one of the huge problems you'll run into is people are not critical. They often showed up to play a game with other people, so they're not thinking in terms of rules. They're thinking, did I have a good time or not?
Yeah. So the social experience colors it a lot.
Yeah, they won't remember what it is that they experienced. And sometimes when you start quizzing them, this is one of the phrases I've said before, the problem that you're not having is not a problem.
Yeah.
So if something was clunky or led to unsatisfying results, like the Torchbearer thing, but the players didn't experience that, they won't report it. Everything went our way, that wasn't it. And then to get more to the theme of, are you playing the game or is the game playing you? For some people, the double blind and manipulating all of those dice and rolling dice was a game.
Yeah.
And that's what they were here to do that. And then they did that, and that was fun. So if you complain, hey, this seemed very tedious and complicated, people say, well, I thought it was fun. And, you don't argue with that. That's, people play EVE Online for a reason. So, that's what they were here to do.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I'm actually gratified to see a lot of the rules light in modern games, because it's a sign that people are not interested in bullshit between them and actual agency.
Yeah, but I think one of the aspects of and one people I think are accepting the new lighter rules. Not everybody, of course, because you have edition rules and Curmudgeon saying, "Oh, I like the way it was before," and multiple levels. Is that there were no other options, or people didn't perceive other options. Right? This is the game we're playing. I like to play this type of game, so we're gonna play it. And so, if they didn't have any other options, that's when they're getting played by the game because the game, you're so focused on it, you can't see beyond it. You can't see, oh, well, I want to play a fantasy adventure. I might try these other 12, 15, 200 versions of the game. Oh, no, I got to play D&D or AD&D or whatever, because that's what happens to be the thing, right?
Well, there is an aspect of finding a game to play in that we overlook, but it does factor into a lot of this discussion in the real world. People want to play these games. But I think that you guys are both getting at a really good point, too, which is that people are attracted to the games for the genre. The first bite you take is with your eyes. Okay, calm down, cat. And a lot of people are like, they're not considering that Cyberpunk Red or Cyberpunk 2020 is maybe a clunky system compared to the Sprawl powered by the Apocalypse Cyberpunk game. They're just here to play some Cyberpunk.
And that's what everyone said they wanted to play.
Yeah.
So, we could be arguing, like this game might be simpler or more fun, but everybody wants to play this. So I guess that's what we're playing today.
And I think in a fundamental way, particularly for GMs, is familiarity. Is like, you say these other games are simpler and better, but I know this game already. I already learned this game, and I'm familiar with it.
And that's the weird. Yeah, that's the weird paradox, isn't it? Where people like the game is more complicated than they may actually understand, or you give them agency, but they're claiming that because they're more familiar with it. I mean, it's another paradox being design. They're claiming, well, I know this game, but they don't actually know this game because they're often omitting stuff that they don't understand or don't care about. And also, they're often taking 10 or 15 minutes to decide a turn in this game that isn't actually giving them any agency. They'd be a lot happier if the turn only took 2 or 3 minutes or 10 seconds, as I'm fond of making fun of.
Right. Yeah.
And that's where the game plays the player, because they come to these conclusions instead of saying, wait a minute, there might be other options.
Well, that, and also, like we said before, I don't think it can be, overemphasized enough that a lot of players just judge whatever experience they had. You will have 1 or 2 players at your table who never learned the rules. They'll even make the statement, I want to play D&D because I know D&D, but if you were to quiz them on it, they didn't actually know D&D. It's just they've heard the phrase before, and they're familiar, they saw Critical Role. Those people were having fun. So they'll sit down and play that game, but they don't actually know any rules. They'll just say they do something, and someone else at the table will interpret it for them. And that's fine. I'm not saying that's a bad way to play. I am saying that from a design point of view, now you're at a distance between what Lessons was talking about all the different source books that are coming out. You want to sell books. As a designer, you want people to buy your books. The best way to get people to buy your books is to make them player-centric. If you sell a book that has more monsters in it, only GMs buy that. If you sell it that has only adventures in it, only GMs buy that. If you sell it with more player options in it, everyone at the table buys that, and that's 5 times as much sale easily. Yep. And so you sell books that have new rules in them, and these rules are supposed to enhance your experience somehow. But you'll often have a lot of players who aren't, where rules are seen as decreasing your experience, especially if they're broken rules. So, but there's motivation in the industry. I mean, like Lessons also mentioned, like we have to feel like it's supported, so we have to keep cranking out new stuff that no one actually wants.
Yeah, I mean, the curve is that they sell a lot, and then as people realize that this becomes more and more niche for each individual players and less useful, they peter out until you get a new edition and you start over again.
Yeah, until you can wipe the slate clean. I mean, there is recency bias is a big thing. People want to play the new content because it's new, and there's an often misguided implication that the new stuff is better than the old stuff, which is propagated because they want you to buy the new stuff. But there's other aspects to this too. You can't even for the players that don't know the rules, the ones that you pointed out, Rafferty, who just show up and enjoy the game and let other people handle any kind of rule dispute for them, even those people, I feel like, are seduced by the rules. There's something like having 3 books of source material is more attractive, even if you don't know what the rules are. Knowing that there are rules, it makes it feel like this is a real crunchy, interesting game experience, right? Like, even if I don't know or don't care, someone knows and cares, and it's a testament to the strength of the system that they keep coming out with rules.
I mean, it has to be good. It's got more rules, right? Yeah,
exactly.
and unfortunately, like this builds a tendency. You have to make more and more rules. That this is another reason why I was objecting to sort of like the Funhouse thing, and related to this, which is more rules that don't add more options are a waste of your time. Because learning, we were already going to hit them with swords. Give me a new rule of a new way to hit them with a sword. It's like HP go down. Okay,
yeah, I mean, if I could climb on the Pathfinder soapbox for a second, like back when Pathfinder was a setting for 3rd edition, and it was kind of a joke setting among people like me who were playing 3rd edition, who were like, "Oh yes, this is 3rd edition for people who need their." What did you say? Lessons, psychotic, psionic, cyber monk with magic and ninjutsu. Like, that was Pathfinder. It was a system where they just threw every single idea at the wall, and it quickly got ridiculous.
Many of them, right? And the thing I was objecting to was that even if you learned how these rules work, they didn't reward you. Like constantly, like the Pathfinder power downs. Like the feat you would take that actually lowers your armor class.
Why?
But prone shooting was what was that one or the feat you can take that lets you taste potions with a DC of 30 when the DC is already 25 in the book. So why did you more rules for the sake of that? And that to me that also builds up the mentality that I'm not a fan of, which is the idea of, well, you shouldn't learn more rules. There should be more, and you should buy them, but new rules are bad. I mean, come on, they're just bad. We know that. So those rules are just there in case someone wants them. So now you have this like engine going on of where no one expects the new rules to be good, but we expect you to keep buying them.
I want to formulate this and see if my wording kind of crunches it down a little bit. I feel that the new rules make the players makes the new rules feel permissive, but end up being obstructive.
I think there's value to the new rules, especially because there's the implication from the beginning that you just ignore anything you don't like. So those rules are there. They're there. If we want them, they're there, right? We have this Easter basket brimming with rules, and it doesn't matter if they're bad, because if they're bad, we just won't use them.
You're literally quoting the designer of the Handbook of Elves, who's now a video game designer, who said, "Oh, by the way, if we hit this Kickstarter goal, I'm going to apologize for making this book." And the first thing he says, like, "No, I'm not, because you should have chosen the rules. You bought this book. It's on to you. That
sounds like a terrible person. Don't give them your money."
Yeah, well,
they don't respect your time. I've talked about the cookbook theory, which was that sometimes people will talk about a game as being a cookbook, which is, like, we don't use all the recipes in this, so we don't even use them as written. We're supposed to mod them. But I recently want to add the caveat of, but you also expect that at some point someone did make this recipe and did eat this. I mean, you would assume all of the recipes of the book are edible.
Yeah, right.
Like making an elaborate recipe in the book that and also, do we really need 2 cups of arsenic? We could probably get away with just 1, right? I mean, it's and my major objection is, like, when you make this stuff so complicated. We already had a discussion which we called mountains of mechanics multiply mistakes, which was the more complicated it is, the more people are going to not do it correctly. Which begs the question, you want people to do the game correctly. That's why I'm always advocating to make it simpler, because I don't want people doing it wrong. And if you make it simpler, it's harder to do it wrong. As a designer for the last 20 years, I'm amazed at what people do wrong. But that's what we do. And I mean, the other thing is you also start to get into exploits, which is where someone either maliciously or accidentally interprets a rule incorrectly. I cannot get over how peasant railgun is something people even say out loud. It's the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
I think that's more of a meme than a thing that people try to do.
Yeah,
but I get what you're saying.
I mean, it's you would have to have a
good shorthand for real problems.
There was another one for D&D 3rd edition that was a way to make one spell blow up an entire town, but to do it, you have to break the rules 3 times. It was like, as a power gamer, I salute the idea that someone who is learning rules is learning them to use them in the game, because that's what the rules are supposed to be. They're a way to express agency in the game. And I want to repeat that because some people will tell you that's not what rules are. Rules are just a big, stupid waste of time in a book somewhere that maybe you consult every now and then. And I don't agree with that. It's like, if the rule is in a book, it must be intended for someone somewhere to use it and to their advantage.
A rule is just there to hamper my creativity, Raph, which is why we don't use them.
Well, yeah, that's what some people will tell you, that it's like, when rules get in the way of creativity. But they're also supposed to be there to enhance people's understanding of the world. This is why we did the Funhouse thing. Like, people will wonder why Rafferty has shown up and he's checked out. Like, Rafferty seems to treat my entire setting with open contempt. It's like, well, yeah, I don't understand any of it, and nothing I do will change anything. So I'm not, I'm one of those players who I'm not doing anything until I can affect something. Because if I can't affect this, I don't care. And I'm not a Harmon Quest or Dimension 20 person. I haven't been paid to care. Man, I'm just mean today.
It's just so hateful. It's just full of rage, nerd rage. It's potent.
Nerd rage.
Yeah,
I feel it though.
Well, it's the paradox of, like, why is speedrunning a thing? Like, people want twice a year to make me watch speedrunning. That's just power gaming bullshit. With people like deliberately exploiting flaws in the rules to get to the game end faster. Why is that a thing? But when I come to the gaming table and try to do this, everybody's on my ass.
Well, because Super Mario Brothers doesn't have hurt feelings when you beat it in 3.5 minutes. And I do.
Crash, though.
I have feelings.
Well, but that would
That's
also beg the question: is, did you invite me to the game just to abuse me?
No, well, okay, so now see.
Yeah, but now we're getting other things. Like, what was the purpose of rules? Like, why
the real issues are coming out? They're boiling to the surface.
Right.
Everyone's got hurt feelings.
Question, why do we have rules?
Right. I mean, ultimately, like, I've said this from the very beginning, and this is my recency bias. This is why I haven't played Warhammer 2nd Edition and why I want to play Lancer. Because I have this idea that as role-playing sort of grows and matures, there is this tendency towards simplification and rules elegance. And, I will say, I think Ironclaw has a lot of rules elegance to it. It's part of the reason why I kept playing it.
It's an older game, too. It's 2007, guys.
I know, it's an old game, but, like, when you look at it, there's a lot in there that's really fun and I think makes a lot of sense. And when I pick up the new Cyberpunk book because I'm like, man, I love Cyberpunk. I love the setting. Everyone's going to be playing this now because the game's coming out and it's going to be awesome. No, this was like a 2018 take or a 2019 take before the game actually came out.
I might add it's at least either the 4th or 5th edition, depending on how you count.
Right, yeah. And then seeing the game.
2020, yeah.
There's a 3rd edition no one talks about. I knew people who wrote for it. And I think there was a 4th after that, but I'm holding to that.
Interlock system. Cyberpunk Interlock.
Somewhere in between there was Interlock. But yeah. But anyway, it's 2018, so it should be a modern feeling release.
It should be modern, right? And I crack it open and I'm like, not only does this read exactly like the game that I was trying to play with my friends when I was 12, but it by modern standards, even by 5e, which is probably not very progressive anymore. Was maybe almost kind of progressive when it first landed.
5e is pretty progressive. It is simpler than 4th edition. It is successful. Its mission statement is definitely simpler than 4e and much more accessible.
Right? Yeah.
And on 5e, it is successful at that.
Exactly. And I think by that comparison, looking at Cyberpunk Red, my eyes glazed over, and I was like, there's a skill for riding animals in this game, and all the animals are dead. Like, how does this happen? Like, it really felt like a copy paste. I mean, they say they updated a lot of it. They took out the crossword puzzle hacking mini game, which I guess is something, but for the most part, it feels untouched from the last version of that game that came out in like the 90s.
Earlier Lessons was complaining about counting bullets in Shadowrun. That rule was taken straight from Cyberpunk, so it's in Cyberpunk.
Yeah. Now, I want to say something that, while simplification is a good trend, I have seen games that are so simple, they literally feel like they're incomplete. At least I have one game, it was a superhero game, and I remember the name of it. But essentially, my GM... No, it wasn't Mask. It was before Mask. My GM was like 10, 15 years ago. Literally had to write entire paragraphs of rules because this game didn't have that content.
Well,
right.
I think related to this, because I don't know what game you're talking about, but I'd love to see it. Powered by the Apocalypse had a similar problem because we started writing for Powered by the Apocalypse. And Powered by the Apocalypse goes way farther the other direction, as in they have like nothing.
Yeah.
In Powered by the Apocalypse, you make an attribute check, and if you roll 10 or better, you get everything you wanted. Do you want to beat up a baby? 10 or better. Do you want to Darth Vader? 10 or better. You roll 10 or better, boom, you're done. 10 or better on anything gets you anything you want, especially like they had to start questioning the seduction rules. You can seduce anyone in the world. You walk right up to them and roll 10 or better. You don't even have to ask the GM for permission. The core rule in Powered by the Apocalypse is say you do it and then you do it. Hey, people, feel free to get in the comments and tell me how wrong I am. It's so bare bones that you have to have a GM who's sitting there to interpret that. And we started to see a backlash against that. Like Forged in the Dark, which owes a lot to Powered by the Apocalypse, has tiers where they started to rank. They said maybe beating up the baby is easier than Darth Vader. But also, maybe we should have like mid tiers and that kind of stuff. You can see a lot of games that are confused about it. Maybe we should have consent as an issue at some point, because just walking up to anyone and saying "I seduce you" for up to and including other player characters might make people a little uncomfortable. It was incredibly bare bones simple, and it was a design challenge for us because when we got to it, it was like this. We were talking earlier about blaming your game master. Like, I don't want to, like a game that's that freeform and that easy would require a highly skilled game master to deal with all the problems and be familiar with the players. And not giving them those tools. In fact, this is the thing that really summarizes all of this. You'll get some games that have shit tons of complicated rules for resolving combat and play. And we were just talking about, where are the rules for resolving relationships? Where are the rules for resolving economics? Where are the rules for dealing with story issues such as time and pacing and character growth and that sort of thing? That stuff that a story would have. Instead, we're spending 90% of our time trying to figure out if you shot him in the forehead or the eyelid, and we have nothing left over for anything even resembling story.
Yeah. And I think that's why the PBTA stuff seems so fresh, especially when you come to it from a background in like more traditional Roll20 stuff.
It's liberating.
D20 stuff, right? It is liberating because you're like, oh wow, all of a sudden this is a communal storytelling experience, which is what most people assume like D&D is going to be, with rules that, like, mechanics that are tied directly to the act of narrative control. That's very cool. But also, that is a very different experience and a very different game. So, yeah, it's interesting to see that evolve.
It's why you see the first PBTA games that came out were very, like, limiting. Like Dungeon World, for all exciting it sounds, is way more limiting than D&D. Because the spell list is smaller, and the number of actions you can do is smaller, and the upgrades are smaller. It's literally like, on the one hand, it's great for if you just want to go into dungeon and kill shit. On the other hand, if you want to do anything else, it can't do that. I mean,
Yeah.
people will comment in threads and say, well, it doesn't say you cannot do that, but comparing that to Dungeons and Dragons, which will discuss ideas like travel, economics, law, and society, Dungeon World is not interested in any of it. So, I found it, especially because I'm a nerd who loves complex systems and manipulating stuff. I mean, usually I'm against the complex systems because they're a dual problem. Because you get the people who don't understand them and thus aren't engaging with them because it's just a waste of time. And then you'll get the power gamers who do engage them and find that they don't actually give you anything. If you're going to make me roll initiative every round, track heat dissipation, track my ammunition, track my exact distance to people, and track 4 or 5 different weapon systems and whether, my action economy, tracking all of that should offer me some strategic advantage. If it doesn't, I'm not going to do it. And I'm going to think less of people who do, which I guess, once again, Rafferty Fillet. Didn't I say I was going to download the haterade?
I feel like, I think it's something I'm coming to more and more. Oh, we talked about it before, how how do you get your players to track their ammo? And the answer is you don't, because no one wants to. Because again, all it's going to do is hurt them ultimately. They've got to be a specific kind of weirdo to do that.
Because we stuck that into Iron. Speaking of how Iron Claw is progressive, we put a secret trick in Iron Claw to make people track their ammo, and I'm almost. Shall I reveal it to folks?
I'm very curious, as someone who's played a lot of this game lately.
If you look up Archer's trappings, if you have the gift of Archer's trappings because you picked one of the archery classes, you'll notice that they give you 12 Theon arrows.
Okay.
Which are the arrows that do +1 damage at short range.
I never noticed that.
And that was the trick to getting people to track their arrows, because regular arrows I don't give a shit. But if you're wondering, archery doesn't seem to do enough damage. Well, if you're an archer, we gave you these special arrows, but only 12 of them that do extra damage. And so now you'll be saying, well, wait a minute. Now, as an archer, because I've built an archer career, if I know I have special arrows that do +1 damage, I'll use them, but only on targets that are worthy of getting +1. So suddenly we had buy-in, and that's what I wanted.
Yeah.
Immediately, a player who is interested in playing an archer, they're not tracking all of their arrows, but they're tracking some of them, and now we have the feel of what we wanted, which was, the storytelling feel of, I'm running out of good arrows, while not necessarily worrying about the other stuff. And that's how you do it. And that's an example of good design, is that sort of modular buy-in. Like where the player suddenly cares, I guess a better example of this might be, one of the big issues I have with D&D is D&D's complexity isn't optional. Like with D&D 5th edition, you have to pick your stupid little trait tree at third level or whatever. I would be happier if that wasn't a rule. But getting back to that, they have, what do they call it? It's not the champion. Who's the one who gets all the funny shaped dice that they, as a fighter, they can use to deflect damage or increase their hit rolls or whatever?
Battle Master. They get superiority dice.
It might be the Battle Master. I went looking for this recently, and unfortunately people homebrew it because they don't like it. So it's hard to find.
Which, by the way, used to be on the playtest almost every.
It was a default rule in the playtest, and they made it an optional tree to take in the later one, which was a smart thing to do.
I think so.
It's ridiculously complicated. Back when it was a default rule, I found it interesting, but it was wise of them to make it optional, opt-in, because back when it was a default in D&D Next, there would be people who couldn't understand it. And it would just piss them off, and then there would be no option. Whereas in D&D 5, you can choose that, or you can just choose the other one that sucks. That's my complaint. You can choose the other one that sucks, whereas instead it should be, you can either choose raw numbers go up or the complexity, and then the complexity you're rewarded because these are actual meaningful things. But once again, that's good design. That's not the game playing you. Good games can have complexity that opt in and reward you, but they also need to have, they really need to have something for the person who just wants to grill, just wants to play.
Yeah. That's, there's an interview I was reading with this guy, Itagaki, who is no longer working at Team Ninja for the fighting game Dead or Alive, which is a loaded thing. I happen to like that series or certain entries in it. They changed it and they made it a much I think they added a lot of depth to this game in the 5th entry, and he wasn't involved in working on that. There was an interview a guy did with him where he was talking about how, like, yeah, well, they made it a much more, like, complex and competent fighter at advanced levels. And this guy was like, yeah, but at the expense of the newbie experience. Like, it may look great at, tournaments and world's tournaments and stuff, but it still would, needs to look great and play great for the dude who plays it for 15 minutes with his friends on the couch too.
Right. It was they want that esports.
Like everyone wants that esports.
Like it's Smash Brothers. Like, as much as Smash Brothers might interest me, there is no way in hell I am playing Smash Brothers against anyone anywhere.
Exactly, and that's another good point. When Smash Brothers broke out into the esports thing in Melee, I'm sorry this is becoming a video game thing, and I apologize, but when it broke out, people weren't playing Smash Brothers. They were removing the items, removing the stages, and removing 90% of the characters. They had boiled it down to a single, very stripped down experience that had very little variety to it, because that was the way that they made it competitive, because it was not designed as a competitive experience.
That's tangential. That's a different RPG experience, because that's one of the problems with the shit tons of rules. Because I will walk into a game saying, hey, I'd like to play this game, and I have a certain combination of rules that interest me.
Yeah.
I heard that D&D 5 consists of this book and that book. I would like to use those books and make my character. And then you run into the problem where the GM says, I'm not using those rules. Or even worse, the GM will say, okay, sure, I'll use those rules, but then I won't, because I don't understand them, so I'll use them incorrectly. Or anything I don't understand isn't in play, because that's what gaming is, right? As the GM, I choose what goes. So I can just say a rule doesn't work anytime I want, right? Once again, the haterade. And so, right, so to me, like, once again, that blurs the definition of what a game is. Is Dungeons and Dragons an experience where you get together with a bunch of people and pretend to be a kobold? Or is Dungeons and Dragons this large library of branded books? Because I got people in my feed saying we're excited about Spelljammer, but is Spelljammer D&D? Because if my GM isn't running Spelljammer, then it's not D&D, is it?
It's complicated, right?
I would say it's not complicated. It's okay if you guys want to, play your game the way it is, but they wouldn't be grinding out these terrible rule books or these ultra complicated systems if people weren't asking for them.
If people were, I don't think they're asking for them, but I do think they are buying them ultimately. Like, who's asking for Spelljammer?
That's even better that they're actually buying them. So
I know. That's the thing, right? Like, you're talking about a fan base that doesn't really care what comes out as long as it's new. I mean, some of them might be, have their fingers crossed for what's left. Plane Shift, or is Plane Shift the one? I don't even know what Planescape, maybe. Yeah,
which is far more interesting.
Everybody wants Planescape. I don't know why they're excited about Spelljammer. Everybody actually wants Planescape,
which is basically the same thing, but more interesting. If you think
it's more, I guess so. I don't have
for adults.
Spelljammer for
I'm
adults.
Full of haterade today.
I don't. Ultimately, it's just new stuff. It's new stuff. That's what people want.
It's old stuff that gets recycled.
It's all. I mean, Spelljammer is old. So, but we could hate on Spelljammer is one of those ones that I have haterade for, because the original rules were terrible. Because you sat down, you played them, they didn't make any sense. And my favorite rule is that any ship that suffers 20% or more damage is scrapped. Because while you can repair it, it costs more money to repair it than it does to replace it.
Okay,
which is one of the most bizarre rules in the game, because that's not how ships work. But we also forget, they're probably going to bring this rule back. You have to toss magic items into the furnace to make the ship fly.
I don't know.
Forgetting that.
That's pretty funny, actually. I feel like that's definitely a good use case for all of those magic items that people collect and never use because they don't.
Well, except you don't do that. Except you don't do that in D&D 5th edition, because in D&D 5th edition you can only have up to 3 items because of attunement rules. So
people still.
So they might keep that, they might not. But also, I'm pointing out, you could just plane shift. We could just walk there. It'd be faster. Why are we doing the boat?
Yeah, again,
But
Sounds like
that's
there's
another
fundamental
example
problems with the lore.
that's another example of Rafferty pointing out. It's like, you guys have rules that make this pointless, but we're going to do it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, because people are just looking for new flavor. It's
People just
flavor.
want a boat in space, and like I shouldn't complain that they want a boat in space. I think it's one of those examples of people will sit down, play it exactly once, do it mostly correct, and then never do it again.
Yeah, I mean, I think doing it mostly correct is probably giving people too much credit too. But look, I will say, I will say that I love that stuff too. Like, ultimately, I have no interest in Spelljammer, but like, I have a 4th edition Dark Sun campaign setting book in my shelf. I have certain genre conventions and things that I'm naturally attracted to. I have several cyberpunk books, as I recently confessed. Like, the thing is that I can't really blame people at the end of the day for being attracted to this stuff for the wrapping paper, because that is what sells the fantasy. That is why people hollow out 4 hours out of their week to go and sit with friends and roll dice and stuff.
We should be acknowledging in the critical sphere, okay, that, I mean, this might be bigger for the discourse. The annoying thing is this will come out and everyone will talk about how great it is, despite the fact that people don't actually want it. They don't actually want these complicated moving parts things. They actually want a different experience, but they'll call what they got their experience. And that's not exactly unique to tabletop gaming, but it's endemic to tabletop gaming, that people are constantly getting what they don't want and giving it 10 out of 10 stars when they should be, if they were more critical minded. Like if people are complaining that D&D 4th edition was too much of a war game, that was their fault. Because if they had wanted D&D 5, they could have gotten D&D 5. If they had said that is what they wanted. And with, I mean, now people are objecting to the weirdo racism and bioessentialism in D&D 5, and they removed that too. It took a lot of fighting to get rid of that too. So I'm just getting kind of angry. Like, I'm glad that not only was there a surge. I mean, my final thought would be, I'm glad there was a surge in indie gaming that was also aggressively immediate. Fate is garbage, and I can prove it because Fate Accelerated is a thing. You don't make a game that's half as big as your previous one, half the size, guys. Wow. And redesign all your old titles using half the rules if like something fundamental didn't change. I made my rules shorter, they made theirs shorter. But you see Fate Accelerated, you see Forged in the Dark, you see Powered by the Apocalypse. You are seeing a rise of new gaming that is also short and immediate with the minimum amount of bullshit in between people and what they want to do. And that, I think, is a great trend in gaming. Even D&D 5 is seeking to have less bullshit in between you and what you want to do. And hopefully the era of stuff like Zweihander and Battletech and its imitators, it'll probably never go away. There'll be nostalgia for it. But even though there's Top Secret New World Order and there's also a new Star Frontiers out that's incomprehensible, it'll always be there. I have hope for the future that I think gaming is the right track.
I mean,
I think it's a good trend, but with a caveat that people, like you said, don't really know what they want, or there's a gap between what they want and what they do and what they need. And so you're always going to have someone, especially the bigger titles, be able to be on this splat treadmill because it's what's expected. And so the games will continue to play the players, because as long as people accept the fact that they need all these books, they want them and need them, they'll continue to buy them. And if they continue to buy them, they are going to be sold to them because the companies have convinced them that they need them and need to buy them. So it's a closed circle there.
You mentioned that this is not unique to tabletop role-playing games. We're in an age where people are, the reason you go to see Morbius and Multiverse of Madness has nothing to do with the content or quality of those properties as films. It's just to further the conversations you're going to have about all of that stuff in your social media feed. And that's the level that entertainment operates at, that people engage with it at. You don't need to know the rules of D&D to play D&D. You don't need to have a good movie to enjoy a Marvel movie. It's where we're at. I know that's kind of tangential to the whole point of this, but you got me angry, Raph, so that's where I'm leaving off at, is ultimately these things. I'm glad that I think they are improving generally, but I don't think they necessarily need to be successful, because the state of the discourse is not about critical reception of the property. It's about the attitudes of the people who are talking about the property.
I think, really, I think in terms of rules, it's like if people want, Critical Role and Dimension 20, they want that kind of thing. Like I'm always the person who's, angry with the Mercer effect, but I'm angry that the games aren't giving people that. And these long, complicated miniatures rules of numbers and initiative dice and manipulating stuff is the opposite of those shows, because they're not doing that shit on camera.
Yes.
If we're going to talk about this as a storytelling community technique and all those things, we need that in the game, and we need to get rid of the other wargaming stuff. As much as I love that, you're just going to attract me at your table. You don't want me at your table. I'm not good people. Because just on the other side here, I'm waiting for Red to lose his shit when I drop an incredible Ironclaw bomb on the game. It hasn't quite happened yet.
I think it's your arrow thing.
I think it's a testament to your quality as the GM. Because of the way the game is written and the way we buy stuff like that, that's a probably different discussion of when people level up and they buy something and no one knows what that is. Like in D&D, where I level up and I pulled an obscure spell from a book that none of you guys knew existed, and suddenly I do Chain Lightning or Ball Lightning. Ball Lightning was the brokenest spell in 3rd edition, because it does your level in dice, and then the ball hangs around for your level in rounds, and you can subdivide it into balls as small as 1 die each. It was broken as shit.
Yeah, no, I believe it. Listen, You should know me by now. I play the ball where it lands. You want to pull some nonsense out of your own rule book? That's fine. You made your bed, we're all going to lie in it.
So that has been Notes from the Aleph. Once again, Griffin is out on assignment. They should be back pretty soon. So if you like what we do, you can come watch us here every other Friday on twitch.tv/Ractus, where we also do other stuff. We play games we actually like. You can watch us suffer and die in Forbidden Lands. You can watch us shoot things. You can watch us roll the most complicated initiative rules ever in Shadowrun. It's all the most complicated ever, and that's kind of sad. But anyway,
there's always a worse initiative system out there, man.
Yeah, there's always a world. Oh my god, we can do it. But once again, you can watch for us. I'm on sanguinegames.com. Legend, you can find your stuff on Amazon, right?
Yes, Amazon, Twitch, and Twitter. And
what's the website you can rent us for as game masters?
Startplaying.games.
Startplaying.games. And also you can find us on social medias and stuff. So thanks for listening to us hate everything you love for the last hour.
Bye, guys.
Bye.